delighted to bring you back to Taste of Travel for a very vital, important question. Is AI a catalyst for positive change? Lance has got all the answers, and with his team, hope you enjoy this next session. Over to you, Lance. Thank you.
As we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of aviation, AI is rapidly emerging as a true game-changing event, a real catalyst for change. And the pace of development is actually quite frightening when you start looking at it. It's truly breathtaking. I mean, views on the potential impact of AI range from eager anticipation to, quite frankly, fearful apprehension as to what this might lead for all of us. Our keynote speaker and expert panel today will provide some real insights into how AI has been developing, share how it's already influencing fundamental aspects of our industry, and paint a picture of what the future could potentially hold. So without further ado, let me introduce you to them. So in the middle there we have Colleen Tynan, who's WestJet's VP for Experience Management. Welcome, Colleen. And then we have somebody who's no stranger to this stage, Mel Berry, who's the Iberia's Director of Customer Experience. And last but no means least, Dr. Max Pelong from Lufthansa Industry Solutions. He's the Director of AI and Data Analytics. He's got qualifications so long, I have no idea what they mean. But we shall hear some more about it. Max.
Thank you.
I will now hand over to Max to deliver the keynote presentation.
Thanks for the introduction, Lance. Welcome you guys. Thanks for joining us today. And as Lance mentioned, so before diving into the question of whether or not it's a catalyst for positive change, let's first have a little look at the evolution sort of AI and what it actually means and what use cases are and so on and so forth, just so that we have a common understanding of what it is we're actually talking about. You already mentioned it, just a few words for myself. So I'm Max, I'm the Business Director for AI and Data Analytics at Lufthansa Industry Solutions. For those of you who don't know Lufthansa Industry Solutions, we're a 100% subsidiary of Lufthansa. We're an IT consulting company. We basically develop or we implement IT projects. We develop solutions for the aviation space, but also for external industries. Without further ado, let's jump into what it is we actually do. Because as I mentioned, so I'm the Director for AI and Data Analytics, and our vision is basically to treat AI sort of like an airplane. It's something that is used by basically everyone, each and every day, but it's something that is maintained and operated by experts. And so when talking about AI, I think first of all we should maybe sort of set the space here and sort of give you an idea of what it is, what we actually mean by AI, and what are areas of AI in which we can see productive use cases. And we'll start up with a rather simple one, so that's computer vision. So anything that has to do with interpreting videos, interpreting images, having an AI that can sort of see objects on an image or in a video stream. That's what we call computer vision. For instance, one nice use case that is sort of catering related would be to use an image of your returning trays in order to have an AI evaluate what parts of the food have been eaten, which parts have been returned, and what the overall food waste generated is. Because obviously there's several use cases on top of that here. We do have the meta use case of having a optimized production planning, because we see that the bread roll is not getting eaten in 90% of the trays, for instance. But of course also this gives us at least the ability to actually track our food waste, because this is something that we currently simply can't do. We can sort of just give a dark estimation about how much food waste we actually generate. With this, you would be able to do so using AI. That's computer vision for you. Leaving the realm of computer vision, Next up, natural language processing. Natural language processing, or NLP, is basically any AI that deals with text. So maybe you want to sort of interpret the sentiment of a comment from a customer, or you would like to know what a certain comment is about. And this is something that is done, I mean, obviously in airspace as well. So for instance, if you think about the crew on your flights receiving feedback from the customers, this can be the undercooked chicken, a non-functional AC unit, or maybe the too lukewarm champagne in the first class, or whichever it is. And so this is a use case that we are, for instance, doing at Brussels Airlines. So they actually have automated their feedback categorization. So all of that feedback that comes in from crew and cabin actually goes through an AI, which then sorts out what is the topic of the general feedback, what do we need to do, and which department do we need to address. And having automized that, of course, you can think about it, it's a real big time saver, because we can basically process tens of thousands of comments within a few seconds. That's natural language processing. Now the next one is probably not that well connected within the whole catering realm, but I'll introduce it anyways. Predictive maintenance, using basically signal or sensory data in order to predict maintenance cycles. Maybe a quick question to the round. So at Lufthansa, one of our shortest hops is the flight from Frankfurt to Hamburg. That takes about 40 minutes of airtime. What do you reckon? With an A320, how much data is being produced on those 40 minutes of flight? Wild guesses?
Give us an option of 3.
Give us an option of 3. Do you want that as real numbers or in nerd numbers?
I don't understand nerd numbers, so yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a big number. And for those of you familiar with the general terminology, it's 20 terabytes of data that we write within a 40-minute flight. And obviously, having that data as a solid foundation in order to do predictive maintenance is quite valuable. And if you scale that up to the 1,500 flights we do every day, you can kind of tell it's really big data, as we like to call it. So our colleagues from Lufthansa Technik are doing exactly that. Of course, they're not processing all of those 20 terabytes, they only pick the ones that they need. And in order for that, or actually what they do is they take that data and they feed a digital twin. So each of our planes exists twice. Once in the actual plane type of style, and once as a digital twin, which is fed the data where we can then basically predict optimized maintenance cycles. And that's predictive maintenance. You could probably do that for a dishwasher too, I presume. But I don't think a dishwasher writes 20 terabytes in 40 minutes. Good. Nevertheless, last up, the bread and butter of data and analytics, forecasts and recommendations. This is something that has been broadly accepted. I think all of you know these use cases, for instance, predicting how many passengers will be on a certain flight to have an improved booking capacity, to have a certain type of airplane delivered at the day of flight, but also, of course, in order to forecast how many meals do I need on my flight. So this is something that has been done, well, for the past 20, 30 years, I guess. We used to call it machine learning. Before that, it was statistics. Now we call it AI. It's fine, though. And last but not least, the last category is not a use case category in itself, but of course, we always need to think about privacy and responsibility. So this is basically the fifth major column within that space. So within all of those use cases, we always need to think about the privacy and the responsibility and how we deal with the data, what data we actually use, where we store it, and so on and so forth. Okay. Had I given this keynote roughly about 2 years ago, I would probably be done by now, and you guys would probably look at me awkwardly because I told you I'd give a 20-minute presentation. But luckily, we do have something new coming up, and that is generative AI. And I guess all of you have heard about generative AI, right? There's basically no way around generative AI if you've been around for the past 2 years. The difference between the use cases that we saw before, where we were about classifying things, predicting things, and so on and so forth. Generative AI, as the name tells already, is about generating things. We can generate code to run programs with. We can generate images, but we can also generate text. And I presume all of you have used ChatGPT at one point or the other. You probably have given it a little go, tried it out, or maybe even already incorporated into your daily work. Nevertheless, it's not just ChatGPT. Little bit of a history lesson here. No worries, we won't go through all of those models. But generative AI is not something that has just evolved within the last 2 years, right? I mean, ChatGPT was the big bang of Gen AI, nonetheless, but it's actually been around since 2014, roughly around that. So that was one publication that actually was the first publication to introduce generative AI. In that case, it was an image model. So it was a model that was fed with training data, and the training data in that case were Renaissance-style portraits of noblemen. And this model was then trained in order to generate its own image, right? And after many millions of iterative cycles, it continuously, iteratively up the performance of itself, and then after I think about 1.8 billion cycles it came up with this. So this guy's named Edmond Bellamy. It's the name that the creator gave to this figure, and given of course it's not the best painting per se. You wouldn't call it attractive or I guess appealing in some manner, but it did have a certain value because it was the first painting that was generated by an artificial intelligence. And thus, of course, they had to auction it off, right? Again, wild guess into the round. Any guesses on the price tag for that beauty?
£20.
20 pounds, 20 pounds. Well, add another 432,000 to that and you're sort of in the right. So about $500,000. Which is quite a lot of money, right? For such a generated painting. So basically, I just click a button. Here you go. Here's your £500,000, right? Cool. Of course, but generative AI. So this is basically the start of generative AI. But obviously, today we're not going to talk about images so much, but of course about ChatGPT and using the generative AI in order to generate text and more. And so I guess you've all used ChatGPT or at least tried it at some point. And what we've all come to see within the last year, probably as well, is that ChatGPT has its limitations. It starts to hallucinate. When you ask it questions that it doesn't know the answer to, it tends to, well, make up an answer, which in some cases might not be true. But this is understandable because ChatGPT was not created in order to generate true answers. It was created in order to generate, well, good sounding answers. So it was the idea was to create a model that can actually build a coherent sentence that sounds as good as possible. So it's kind of like an IT consultant, I guess, in some way. It just has to sound flashy, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to be true. I can say that because I'm an IT consultant myself, so no hard feelings here. But one of the main applications that we do see, which is popping out of Gen AI and out of ChatGPT, is what we call retrieval augmented generation, or RAG systems. And the idea behind this is in order to use ChatGPT in a more efficient manner, we teach ChatGPT certain things. So what we can do is we can take such a language model, such as ChatGPT, and basically implement it into our infrastructure and then feed additional data into it. This can be, for instance, process data, internal documentations or descriptions about how to do things, right? Which makes those documents queryable. So think about the use case. You have a user. This could be, for instance, an employee who wants to set up a certain type of process but doesn't really know how to do it. They will probably ask their colleagues. If they don't know the answer, they'll probably ask their superior, and so on and so forth. And lots of emails will be sent around, lots of talking and asking will be done when actually they could have just found the answer somewhere within the documentation. But nobody knows where in the documentation. So the idea here is to have that documentation within ChatGPT, and then basically you can just ask ChatGPT to give you the answer. And so as this is rather technical now, let's have a quick look at this. Let's ask a question. So what you see here is just a little front end where we can interact with ChatGPT, and in the background we have uploaded a certain process manual. We're now more in the handling area of things, so how to handle freight and so on and so forth. And I don't know if you can actually read that from the far back, but I'll just read along. So we'll ask ChatGPT about the packaging requirements for seafood. So what are the packaging requirements when transporting seafood, for instance? ChatGPT then goes into the documentation that we have on that topic and generates us an answer as we know it, right? So it now tells us the specific requirements. I'm not going to read them out, all of them, but it basically tells us which label do we need, what do we need to take care of, and so on and so forth. And it actually gives us the citation as well. It tells us where it found that information in the document, so we can, with just one click, hop into the document. It takes a while to load. It's about 900 pages long, so bear with me. We can then have all the actual information within the document, and rather than pushing Control F and searching for a certain keyword in your document until you've actually find the right passage, you can semantically query your documents. And this is a huge advancement, and this really, really eases working with documentation, with processes, and so on and so forth. And as we know it from ChatGPT, we also have a certain historization, meaning we can ask follow-up questions. So how do I label this? Which specific form do I need to fill out? And it will basically know the context and give me the perishable label which needs to be used and the form 502300. And let me tell you, as a German, this is every bureaucrat's dream, and I absolutely love it. You ask the question and you get the form number. Perfect. So this is what we can do with ChatGPT in terms of so-called retrieval augmented generation platforms. So we are now able to semantically interact with our documents rather than doing keyword searches or scrolling through it forever. How am I doing time-wise? I'm still good,
You're
right?
Good. You're still good, yeah.
Ah, perfect. All right, and let's head on. So I showed you this retrieval augmented generation architecture, and what I've showed you is that we can use it with text. We can use PDF documents. We can even use databases and so on and so forth. Anything text-related. But there's more. We can also use images. By now, we have the possibility to include images where, for instance, maybe you have a certain capture or a certain image that describes a process in a drawn way. We can actually describe those images and include that as well. We can even include videos. So you could even push a video into those rec architectures and then ask questions about the video itself. There's several ways we can do that. We can track the audio signal of the video, but we can also look at the images within the video. We could probably, for instance, if we're recording this, we could later on ask what the color of my sweater was that I was wearing, and we would be able to answer. You will be able to just ask ChatGPT, hey, how does my clothing look like? What are my numbers, right? And ChatGPT will then orchestrate a number of tools which will go into the data, fetch the relevant data, do the analysis, and then basically give you the result. So this is something that things are working towards. This, I guess it's safe to say we'll have that by the end of the year, at least from the hyperscalers such as Azure and AWS and GCP. But of course, it's a lot more. It's not just multi-tool agents. It's not just ChatGPT. It's not just generating text. It's also generating images, right? And so I took the liberty of picking up one of our newsletters and regenerating the images in it. Quick show of hands. One of these images is generated. One is the real deal. Which one do you think is generated? The one on the left or the one on the right? Yes, Joe. The right. I can see you're all well trained. We're sort of able to spot this by now, but yes, the images on the right have been generated. So keep in mind, these images were generated with a text prompt. So basically, I just described what I wanted to see in the image, and the AI generates those images for me. Right? And if we now take a real close look at those images and remember Edmond Bellamy, and remember the fact that Edmond Bellamy was, well, roughly 8 years ago. That is quite the fascinating advancement that I think we're in for a lot of more fun and even more exciting treats in the world of Gen AI. And with this, I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Max, for those fascinating insights. I think anybody that's in design must be panicking by now because, you know, and it's the timelines, isn't it, of time it takes to get things done. I remember going through voyage reports and trying to write out answers to these things for so long. And the opportunity to then quickly understand what the trends are and what I now need to do about it is fascinating. But let's throw it up to the panel because these guys are working at the sharp end as we speak. What's any questions for Max that's come, Colleen? Perhaps you can start off the project.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Great presentation, Max.
Cheers.
Thanks for putting that together. I think it was pretty fantastic. What was crazy to see is the development from in the last 8 years. Any predictions as to maybe where we could go in the next 2 or 3?
Generally, yes. I mean, we saw the multi-tool agent thing, but I think generating images and videos especially is going to be one part that is going to be very big. So with those rack architectures that I showed you, we can't just push videos in, but we can also get videos out. Think about it this way. We can generate the text as an output, but we could also use that text as the basis for a video, which is something that I think, Mel, you are already doing, right?
Yeah, we are actually. We hope to be able to share it today. So one of my biggest weaknesses, I have to admit, is that I work for a Spanish airline, an amazing Spanish airline, and I don't speak Spanish. But now I can. So we've been working on AI avatars. So I have my own avatar, and I can speak any language I need to. So I have already uploaded a video into the website, given permission to use it for our use, and I can just now go in and say, I would like to prepare a video to customers to explain a certain situation. Can you prepare it in English and Spanish? And automatically I have produced a video that I didn't actually have to do. So it gives me a huge opportunity to really communicate, change the way that we work. We're using that technology for training, so we're using it to create training pills for the cabin crew, and we will start using it soon for customer videos because it's a really good way to use the technology, I think.
Yeah. Just for clarification, this is the real Mel. This isn't. I can touch it. Colleen, what's happening in WestJet?
Yeah. So some of the things that we've got going on. I was reading through and noticing in your presentation how the generative AI and being able to search things. And so, we had an old chat bot and we had challenges with it and being able to surface the right information. And now, with Google, now we're moving towards the generative AI behind the scenes so that we removed the chatbot, and now we're able to use this, and it's much faster, similar to your example where it shows the information, it shows the regulation from a guest so that they know what to expect when they get on board the aircraft, and what that experience is going to look like. So that was a really quick turn on, a switch on that we were able to do last fall, and it's really served our guests quite positively. So that was one example that I was using, and then it was in the presentation today. So that was that was very well timed. But yeah, no, it's we've been able to do that. One of the other things is we did a video to one of our last marketing campaigns, and it was all done by AI, which was a pretty cool thing that our marketing team did as well. They put in the text, created the video.
And what sort of timelines does that involve? When you send it off to designers, 2 months later you might get something back, and then what sort of timelines are we looking at now?
Well, it's so fast now. Myself, I've gone into ChatGPT and said, write a job posting for this job, and I just gave 2 lines and a title, and I had every different task that the person could possibly need to do. And so it speeds up the time. It gives you the freedom to do the pieces that need that personal connection, versus spending time thinking about, okay, and then they should want to capture this part, and so it gives you the freedom to be able to do more now, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Max,
On the other hand, I've been receiving quite a lot of job applications with ChatGPT written motivation letters. So don't do that. We know.
Yeah, actually, whenever I use ChatGPT, I have to keep saying, "Can you tone it down a little bit? No, bring it down some more. Bring it down a little bit more." It exaggerates quite a lot.
Absolutely.
It's always a good starting point, though, I think, and then you can put the human connection into it.
Yeah. So one question I've got is when will the ChatGPT bot that I talk to for my banks understand what I really want?
Well, the question is, does it really understand what you want, or does it basically mimic the human behavior and the human language and the way we talk, right?
Yes.
I guess we're not far from it, actually, but I always struggle a little bit to accept the term that it understands what I really want, because what's happening in the background is basically just probabilities being calculated, right, and thrown back at you. But it will give you the result that you want pretty soon, I would presume.
Yeah. Will it be the same as talking to a human person in terms of emotional intelligence?
I would say no. But I do know of some very impressive examples that would state otherwise. What's your guys' take on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We're trying to use it in different ways. So instead of using it as someone that you're going to be talking to, using it to help the call centers with the response. So you would still talk to a human, but the human was advised by the AI tool what to say or what the problem is or some solution. So we're trying to use it in different ways, so that we get the benefits and the efficiencies, but we don't lose the human touch, because I think it's really important in everything that we do to keep the balance between the digital and the physical. Exactly what you were saying, people still really value the physical part, the physical touch, the interaction with human beings. I think all of us, we can't underestimate that, and we should find these things to help us do our jobs better, not necessarily about replacing us.
Absolutely. And maybe if I may add on to that, something that we're seeing also is that people will adapt in terms of how they speak with an AI, because that is something different. So within these rack architectures, we're doing projects. We have over 25 projects implementing such architectures. And of course, we always do a test cycle where we have a small group of users that test, that can ask questions and so on and so forth. And one of the biggest issues is that those users type the questions as if they would be asking Google, because they sort of have adapted that. They no longer interact with it as they would with a human being. And that's something that I think we also need to adapt to, first of all. We need to learn how to speak with an AI.
Yeah. The question that in my mind is what happens to human creativity? I've seen a painting that you've sold for 450,000, which is done by a computer, and it worries me. I've spoken to journalists who say I haven't got a job anymore because they can rattle out a report, give it all the information in 10 minutes, which used to take me 2 days. So what happens to creativity, Mel?
I read a really good quote, which I think is something that we need to think about. I'm going to read it so I don't forget it, but what they say is AI makes average people better, but it does not work better than creative people. So I think that's something that's important to remember. It's not, if you are creative, it's not going to be able to replace what you do.
Yeah.
And also in that regard, AI only replicates what it has seen during the training. So for AI to actually be creative and create something that has never been done before or it hasn't ever seen before is quite unrealistic, actually.
Yeah.
I think the two can work quite nicely in parallel too, though. If you think about big fireworks shows, the creativity that goes along with those fireworks shows, and now you have the drones being able to do those shows too. So it's combining the two things together, where I think that it becomes very, very powerful versus one versus the other. Where when you're putting those together, I think there's a really cool opportunity to take what is already very creative and spectacular to see and take it to another level by using some of those things. So I think that there's an opportunity to not think about it as will it replace, but how do they work together to be even more creative?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I totally agree. I think it's about how the two work together to make something very special.
Yeah. Any closing comments from you guys? I think we've already run out of time, haven't we, Joe? Yeah.
Haven't we got 15 minutes?
Oh, have we?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
2:15, isn't it?
I was trying to get off.
We can be done.
Do
Well,
continue.
shall we talk about the future?
Yes,
So,
please.
so from my point of view, I think the possibilities are endless. It can really help us in all areas of what we do. And really, when I try and think about it, I think, how can it help me with the customer facing, so the front of house, and how can it help me with the back of house? And I think it can help guide customers through the process. So I think it's quite similar to what Max had in his presentation. But for me, I think there are kind of 4 areas, which is AI can help be an expert. So it can assist agencies, call centers, customer-facing teams with answers to questions, give them the knowledge that they don't have. It can be a creator. So for me, already, it's a translator. It really, really helps definitely with translation. And in airlines, that's always something that we struggle with. It can be a supervisor. So it can analyze data for us. It can look, for example, now we already have a tool in Iberia where I literally just write in, instead of reading 10,000 verbatims from customers, I can write in now already. Any day I say, can you summarize what the customer verbatims were yesterday? And then it will give me, and I can say, can you give me the top 10 issues? Or I can say, can you summarize that in 4 bullets? So it's really, really good at being a supervisor. And it can also be an advisor for us. So, making recommendations on past history. So for customers, it can also advise on, you've been on holiday here, you flew here, why don't you think about trying other destinations based on these things? So I think, there is a whole host of things that it can help us with as we get more used to it and it becomes more advanced.
Yeah. Colleen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you summarized those very well, so it's sort of hard to follow. No, great job. But to your point, being able to summarize, I think, and serve yourself the information. The verbatims is an incredible one, knowing exactly in the moment what your guests, your consumers are either positively or negatively impacted, and being able to adjust on the fly. I think it adds a speed to market on being able to adjust those things from a guest journey perspective. I think that's fantastic. I think there's a lot of opportunity to serve ourselves the information that allows us to make decisions in a better manner. Yeah.
I think it's that real-time ability. I remember waiting sort of 2 weeks after month end to realize whether I had a crap month or not. And from a financial perspective, that's the really exciting bit, is that you can spot things quicker, enable you to do something about it before it was, you're back into a different month altogether and a whole new cycle of menus. So is that something that, from what you're seeing when you're talking to people, is that the driver behind it? Is it customer experience? Is it the financials? What are people focusing on right now?
It's really hard to tell, because it has such broad applications, and it's now available to basically everyone, right? Because we used to decide a lot more in terms of top-down decisions. We had an upper management that said, I want to cut costs by 10%, and I can do so implementing that AI use case, right? Whereas now we have a broad availability and broad application of, for instance, ChatGPT, which then fosters use cases being drawn up bottom up. So basically the people, the business experts are starting to tell us what they want to use it for. So that's one really interesting aspect and sort of a paradigm change that at least we in the consulting business see.
Yeah. Elon Musk had a video recently that he pushed out which suggested that nobody needs to work anymore going forward because AI can take over the world, and we just enjoy a life of leisure and wealth and happiness. Is that a reality? Is that what
who's maintaining the AI?
Exactly. Yeah, it's frightening when people like that who are leading the thinking in some of these places are saying things like that, because it's a real fear factor that we need to worry about, because there are some real jobs out here that sort of say, well, what happens to me?
Absolutely, and I mean this has always been a factor. This has not just been around since Gen AI. This is a question that we always get asked, that we always sort of struggle with as well. But as you already put it, Mel, earlier on, it's not there to replace the human, but to make the everyday work easier, right? It's sort of, it's not competitive in a way.
Yeah, I think if we can spend less time analyzing data, I've had many times where the customer satisfaction one day was really low, and someone said, I need to know exactly why by the end of the day. And my poor team will be reading thousands of verbatims. And now I say, yeah, okay, no problem. I'll give you the answer in 2 minutes because I can find out that easily. And then we can spend our time fixing the problem, not spending hours and hours analyzing the data. But we do have to learn how to analyze the data, because I've learned from my own questions, about how specific, you need to ask the questions to get the right answers. So we all have to learn, but I think we can exist together, and we have to. I really don't believe we can be replaced. Especially what we do. It's very, very physical. Until, I don't know, we start teleporting, hopefully we'll all have a job.
Excellent. The question one of the other questions that came through was to what extent is essentially a war between China and the US and this huge rapid development that's going on. Who's the gatekeeper? Who's protecting, what's being developed at the moment?
Everybody's looking at me. Is that because I'm the European here? No. Of course. I mean, we do have two very big players in that terms, and then we have the European Union that is not as brave and not as innovative as these other two players, but that is very regulative. And I think so. It has positives and negatives to it. So of course we do need the regulation. When talking about, I had this earlier, my fifth category was privacy and responsibility. We need to take care that we know the data that we feed into those models is not biased towards a certain ethnic group, for instance, right? This is one of the best examples for that was the machine learning model that basically predicted the creditworthiness of US citizens. And it had a bias in the training data and thus graded African Americans lower than Caucasians, right? So this is something that we'll have to look at, and we can't just say, no, it's not going to happen, and we will just ignore it. We have to do it. And this is something that the EU does fairly well, especially with the European AI Act, which is coming up. But then on the other hand, that also really restricts businesses, that sets another hurdle that people need to overcome in order to use their technology. And speaking at least for the German market, we see many customers that are currently not implementing use cases simply because they say we're not sure yet. We'll see what the other guys are doing, and this of course creates a certain latency and creates a lethargy actually in terms of implementing those use cases.
And just to add to that, we all have cybersecurity teams, and an important thing moving forward is that those teams then create AI policies and procedures, because there's a risk that everyone suddenly goes to external ChatGPT and puts all the information in there. Well, we can't do that, so it's really, really important that all businesses then create their own policies and procedures of how they're going to use AI.
Any closing comments, colleagues?
No, I think they've both captured that pretty well. But in all honesty, I think there's the opportunity to use AI in a way and in a manner that serves the information to the human, to allow them to use the human touch. That, going back to one of your initial comments around that emotional intelligence, I just don't think that will ever come through to the same extent to really be able to know and read and understand a situation. And so, but to serve them with the information that allows them to have that connection piece, I think can be quite powerful. And so going back to the fireworks and the drone show and everything, I think when you combine the two things together, whether it's creativity, human connection, and power ourselves through AI behind us, I think the world is our oyster.
Yeah. Well, I think that the main takeaways that I've got from this session is that, first of all, we're not going to be replaced anytime soon yet, so thank goodness for that. But it's a really powerful tool, and used properly can really improve a lot of what we do, make things better for the passenger. At the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do over here. But it remains for me to thank Max and Colleen and Mel for a really engaging, I think, conversation. And of course, thank you to the audience for listening, and hopefully you found that interesting. If you have any questions, we are going to be around for a little while longer, so you can have a little chat with us. Okay, or ChatGPT will talk to you. Thank you so much, guys.
Cheers.